All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you. I'm humbled and, might I say, gratified by your recorded applause. It means so much to me. Wow, what a day it will be. I have a Hall of Fame broadcaster joining me. I have a brilliant legal analyst joining me. It is a pretty cool day ahead. Albert is here, my friend.
Albert, thank you.
Albert, can you keep track of everything? We got a lot of stuff going on.
I got a lot to track today.
Don't want you to get at the yips and hit the ball into the woods on us. We need focus. Okay, my friend? Okay. What happened with the Giants yesterday, Albert?
Oh, great stuff. Great stuff. We actually hit the ball a lot.
It's been a pretty depressing road trip. So it's nice to see, I get the scores hitting my MLB app, and I've been pretty downcast with the San Francisco Giants. This is the show that started in San Francisco, so we retain our roots there to our KGO family and to our San Francisco Bay Area crew. But we've expanded, and we're excited to welcome you all in from around the country and around the world, for that matter. I get emails from all over, and really do appreciate you, interacting with the show, supporting the show, just in the way you interact, and subscribing to the show, sharing the show, all of that stuff. We'll talk about that later. I do want to get into things because this is a significant inflection moment in everything that's going on with the president, Donald Trump, embattled as he is. This Epstein problem won't go away for him. It's only deepening. And in an effort to throw the press and MAGA Nation off of the scent of the Epstein files and the fact that his name does appear multiple times in those files, he's throwing accusations at Hillary Clinton, at Barack Obama. There's a criminal referral. We'll get into some of those specifics, and I want to play for you some of what was said by the Director of National Intelligence, who is Tulsi Gabbard. If ever there was someone who is ready to sing from the Trump hymnal, you will find Tulsi Gabbard, head of the parade. And so we'll get into all of that in the minutes ahead. I also will, we'll kind of toggle back and forth between the revelations associated with Epstein and then the new accusations that Trump world is offering to sort of, again, distract from the Epstein files. I mean, we heard about, rethinking the name of the Washington football team so that they shouldn't be called the Commanders anymore, telling the Cleveland baseball team that they should dump Guardians, go back to Indians. I mean, the whole slew of things is just designed, I think, just to throw stuff into the news cycle and in some way distract. But there are serious allegations here. And of course, the Epstein files themselves contain loathsome, grotesque allegations and conclusions, really. These are more than just allegations. Witness testimony, depositions. I mean, these investigations have yielded what was a worldwide human trafficking ring. And so the fact that Donald Trump's name shows up a number of times here, while not suggesting he was an integral part of human trafficking in any way, it is at best a bad look and maybe even more damning than that. So I want to get into all of that in the minutes ahead. I do want to mention Kim is not here. As you know, Kim, my darling Kim, who does the news and handles so much of the content of the show, her mother had a mild stroke. We think it's a mild stroke. And she is with her mom in the hospital. And so that is why Kim is not here today. So Albert and myself, thinking of Kim, of course, but we will soldier on. But we hope, and again, I'm reflecting communications that I had with Kim, we hope that Kim will be back here tomorrow. But it was definitely an alarming piece of news, and I've obviously postponed my trip that I had planned to be here today. Yeah, sending Kim our thoughts. So I will tell you that there is one thing that's happened that is a benefit for you and for me in the planning of today's show, which really was done by Kim. And that benefit is our next guest. So I'll get to
The Mark Thompson Show.
I consider Gil Gross a Hall of Fame broadcaster, political analyst. He's a remarkable mind with a remarkable resume. And anytime I can talk to Gil Gross is a time of celebration. I cannot overstate it. You can tell just by my enthusiasm. Again, Gil Gross is one of those names to me, especially as a broadcaster, that I just have such excitement when I hear. So please, without any further delay, how about the great Gil Gross, everyone? Look at you. You healthy devil. You look good.
Live up to that. I'm leaving now.
You look rested and ready. I love it. You know, I can't imagine a time in modern American history more both fraught with danger and also informed by insane criminality. This is a period, Gil, that makes like the Nixon administration look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I mean, really. I mean, it's a truly a scary thing when you have, in my judgment, the government of the United States walking in lockstep with the president without any guardrails at all. And then you have, as we've seen, the director of national intelligence in the form of Tulsi Gabbard essentially crafting a message to try to suggest that the prior administration, the Obama administration, prior to the first Trump presidency, was involved in some kind of election engineering. It was in a way, I guess he's playing the old hits, but in another way, it really whipped my head around to remind me of how dangerous things can really get.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood because Ellen Aberlin, who played Lady Aberlin on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, said just this morning that the news right now is like living in the National Enquirer, put in a container of pulled pork, sitting in the green room of the Jerry Springer show. And I think Ellen pretty much nailed it. Getting to Tulsi Gabbard, who as National Intelligence Director is a little like making Dostoevsky the head of humor. This stuff is going on all over. It's not just this, oh, Hillary Clinton was on drugs thing, or the claims about Obama committing treason and stuff, which even Ted Cruz has said, yeah, it's nonsense. That's not going anywhere. But the Pentagon, in reacting to news that from their reports about the Inspector General of the Pentagon looking into Pete Hegseth's giving out national intelligence information in a non-classified way, instead of just saying, well, it's not true, even though indications are it's true, but said this stuff is as old and as doddering as Joe Biden was. So they're doing all this stuff, trying to throw these sticky spiders against various Democrats so MAGA people don't look at where Trump is and where this administration is. And it's important to remember, because people speak of MAGA as this one thing that is supporting Donald Trump, and it does. But MAGA has a couple of contingencies. One of them is, I support Donald Trump no matter what. There's also a large, not a majority, but a very large percentage of MAGA, which came to this out of Q, which everybody is trying to forget. The fever dreams of this guy who was sitting in the Philippines making up stuff about children being raped in the non-existent basement of a completely innocent pizza parlor by Democrats. It's those former Q people that within MAGA that are causing huge problems for Trump, because they're completely sold on this thing of Democrats and their allies have been raping little children. And they've been constantly sold on this by Donald Trump and his allies. That Q faction, which is still pretty strong. Give you an example. There was just a poll found 87% of Republicans overall support Donald Trump. but only 35% believe him on Epstein. Because they've been living the Epstein fever dream. And a lot of that comes from Q selling all of this. I know they're mostly forgotten now, but they're selling this for years as an important part of why, attacking Iran doesn't bother MAGA, even though Trump said no more wars, why all of these other things you think would upset MAGA don't. This issue does, because it's got a 3-4-year-old pre-sale.
That's so well described, because you're right. That part of MAGA that is committed to that conspiracy feels, hey, there are really kids who are threatened by, and then of course, as you say, the conspiracy goes even, it's more than pedophilia. It's like eating kids and all this other stuff. I mean, it got really crazy. But the idea that the Epstein files contain a lot of information on Democrats who are behind this plot, that has been something that they've had a death grip on. And so now when you have their guy in who said, we're going to tell all and blow the whistle on all these Democrats, all of a sudden you have him saying, hey, there's nothing to see here. They know that they're being betrayed. And you even see it at the highest levels of the GOP. A House subcommittee now voting to subpoena Justice Department for Epstein files is the latest headline. 3 Republicans on the panel voting with Democrats for that subpoena. That subpoena then for those files defies Trump and GOP leadership. MAGA Mike actually adjourned Congress prior to even the chance to vote on seeing those Epstein files. Of course, that vote was demanded by the Democrats. So to subvert that vote, he adjourns Congress for the session, for the summer. So I love that you point to MAGA Nation, because they seem as though they would be angered by this, and they likely are angered by this. I wonder to what extent they will pick up and be reminded, Gil, that the real enemy is the Democrats, and let's pay attention to the stuff that Tulsi Gabbard is serving up for us now. In other words, can they be distracted by the new shiny object?
No. And let's be clear about something. The MAGA people who are upset about this are not going to be voting Democratic in the midterms. So what we're talking about at most for the Democrats is that some MAGA people get so disgusted by this, they don't vote, that it suppresses the Republican vote. That's the best Democrats are going to get out of this. Nobody who, was full MAGA, or especially, were Q supporters, are going to go, yeah, okay, maybe Hakeem Jeffries has a point. That's not a happening thing. Still, it's a danger for Trump if a Republican vote is suppressed in the midterms. Are any of these things, Hillary Clinton was on drugs? Well, who cares? She's never running for anything again. It's not going to carry anything. It doesn't mean anything. All of these things that they're trying are against Obama, same case. He's never running again. Doesn't make any difference. Are against his old enemies, the Pentagon, going on about Joe Biden yesterday. I mean, give me a break. Part of this is they don't know who in the Democratic Party to really focus on right now, because the Democratic Party is so askew. It's kind of like, well, who's the 2028 Democrat we need to focus on? They can't figure it out. Neither can the Democratic Party. That all said, some of this is just they're repeating these memes from Trump's old enemies list.
Exactly.
And he doesn't know enough about any new people to yell and scream it out, except maybe Mamdani, the possible new mayor of New York City, because he's from New York City and he has friends there who talk to him things, and he's a Muslim. So,
Yeah, right. There's a lot wrapped up into that one reference, exactly. But you wonder if MAGA even is aware of Mamdani in any kind of a high-profile way. As you say, they're tuned into different frequencies. You mentioned this a couple of times, and I want to play it because it is a Russian talking point. This is a piece of Russian intelligence that was regurgitated by Tulsi Gabbard yesterday. It was an extraordinary thing. This is the thing about Hillary being on, mood stabilizers or whatever that is. I could not believe it. Tulsi Gabbard saying this. Go ahead, Albert. Play a little bit of this for Gil.
Emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness. and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the
stop
IC
right there.
misled
I really just
lawmakers
wanted you to
by
hear that
referencing
first
the
part,
debunked
because
Steele
that
dossier.
is Russian intelligence that Tulsi Gabbard was, as I say, offering. That, I mean, it's lifted right out of the Putin intelligence, and it was just articulated by the Director of National Intelligence for the United States of America. It's an extraordinary thing.
It is an extraordinary thing. And Donald Trump is enamored of other dictators, whether it be the leader of Hungary or the leader of Russia and Putin, or remember the bromance he had during his first term with the leader of North Korea. He loves these guys. He wants to pattern himself out after these guys. He also wants to think that he can eventually overpower them and become the king of these people. That hasn't worked out very well for him. He's, right now he's really upset with Putin because Putin proves to be a guy who just goes, yeah, I'm just using you. I'm not really going to pay any attention to anything you say in Ukraine or do anything because you said anything.
Play the rest or a little bit more, if you would, Albert, of Trump sort of celebrating Tulsi Gabbard. This is Trump speaking. And Trump was making the point that this should be the new narrative. He's celebrating Tulsi Gabbard in the room, clearly for, baking this new cake that we can serve to the media. And then he actually describes the way in which we will serve it to the media. Go ahead, Albert.
And Republicans are doing well. And I have the best numbers I've ever had. It's amazing. I watch people on television. Well, what about Donald Trump's polling numbers? Yeah, they're the best numbers I've ever had. But remember this, Obama cheated on the election. And we have it cold, hard, blue, and it's getting even more so because the stuff that's coming in is not even believable. So, and you should mention that every time they give you a question that's not appropriate. Just say, oh, by the way, Obama cheated on the election. You'll watch the camera turn off instantly. But I want to thank all of you again, once again. This is an incredible job. It's incredible people, really incredible people.
One thing, just stop for a second, Albert, then continue. Gil, it's funny to me that he talks about Obama fixing the election. That's the election he won.
Yes.
It's the most extraordinary fix that I've ever seen, given the fact that it didn't work.
Here's the wonderful Freudian moment in that, where Trump says, the stuff that's coming in, it's not even believable.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Did you catch that?
Right, exactly.
Just
Go ahead, Albert. Play
the rest. Something leaked out.
Play the rest for him, please.
Director of National Intelligence. Oh, where's Tulsi? She's like hotter than everybody. She's the hottest one in the room right now because she found out with certainty. I think we knew it before, in all fairness, Tulsi. But now you have certainty. She has all the documents. She has everything that you need. And she found out that Barack Hussein Obama led a group of people and they cheated in the elections and they cheated without question. It's not even would you say there's even a little question there, Tulsi? She says no. And you found things that nobody thought we'd ever find. And very happy and very honored to have you with us. She's right now, by far, Speaker, she's hotter than you right now, Speaker. She's the hottest person in the room right now, Speaker. So Tulsi, great job, and I know you have.
Yeah, again, Tulsi, great job for serving up, as I say, what is the president wants, which is for everyone to pay attention to this and not the Epstein files, which we'll get to in a second. But Gil, I wanted you now play a little bit, Albert, if you would. Clapper, who he's gone after, as you know, Gil, and he wants to go over Obama, Clapper, Comey, and again, I'll go ahead, just play a little bit for Gil, if you would.
And it's great to have you here, Director Clapper. I mean, it was a remarkable appearance by someone who now holds the job that you previously held. And she's basically accusing the president that you served under and the people you served with and you of fabricating an intelligence assessment to damage President Trump. What's your response to that?
Well, it's patently false and unfounded. I was present at the meeting that everybody talks about, and I heard directly what President Obama asked us to do, which was to compile all the reporting and summarize it that we had accumulated in the run-up to the election of 2016, put it in one document in various levels of classification, and including a public release. And he wanted that done before the end of his administration. It was not to concoct intelligence or make it up or anything of the sort, which is absurd.
So he told you to investigate, but you're saying he did not tell you what conclusion to reach.
He did not.
Because that's what they're essentially alleging here. She's saying the assessment used unclear, unknown sources, and that it was subject to unusual directives from President Obama, and also the allegation that it was a rushed assessment, essentially.
Well, yeah, yes, we had a short deadline to get it done because the president stipulated he wanted it completed before the end of his administration in order to be able to hand off a compilation of what the Russians had attempted to do to influence the outcome of the election in 2016. He wanted to be able to hand it to the then President-elect Trump and to the Congress.
There seemed to be some conflating over whether Russia could actually change voting machines, whether they did do that, and in terms of who Russia wanted to win the election. One thing that was a huge point of focus for Director Gabbard was that they're pushing back on the notion that Russia wanted Trump to win, that they did this to help Trump. Was that intelligence, you believe, sound when that finding that Russia was doing this in the favor of Trump?
First, on the voting machines, it's quite correct. The Russians did not electronically penetrate any voting machine or anything connected with tallying votes. So they did not succeed, even if they attempted, which we don't think they did, to manipulate voting. What the Russians did do, in contrast to that, was mount a very sophisticated, extensive, and aggressive information operations campaign to influence public opinion in this country. And they used phony social media posts, phony social media accounts. RT, the Russian government-controlled media outlet, which has a bigger following in this country than this network does. They used fake news implants, was very sophisticated and very focused on what, and they wanted to first sow doubt, discord, and distrust among the American public. And I believe they succeeded. And unfortunately, we're a ripe target for exploiting our divisiveness and politicization. And they did favor the candidate Trump over candidate Clinton. Long-standing animus for the Clintons by Putin. And that carried over to the election. He held
good. So
secretary.
that's what that was a good lengthy chunk, but I wanted to really explore it with the former DNI, what he knows. And what he's saying is, yeah, Russia didn't flip any votes, but they essentially put on a full court press with disinformation.
They did. And in fact, it led to a dispute between me and somebody I did consider a friend, and then I can't really say a dispute since I don't know Tom Hartman, but Tom Hartman and Larry King, and Larry and I, we're friends, we're both on RT. And the idea was why RT wanted them was to draw otherwise liberal progressive people into watching RT and all its 22 hours of other shows and propaganda. And I was really upset with both of them for doing that, just so they could go, I'm on television, not just radio, I'm on TV.
And it legitimized, you're saying, on some level, RT because of those personalities on it.
It legitimized it, but more than that, the shows served as a way to get people to watch Russian propaganda in all the other hours that they otherwise would not have watched, because they're filled with promos for the other shows. And if it happened to be on, here comes the next show. So that was especially unfortunate. And that went on for years, but that's what RT was about. As well as Sputnik, they had a whole organization that was doing radio shows. There were several radio stations in this country that basically released by Russian services and just put on Russian propaganda all day.
Gil,
They
I have
weren't
a
major stations
confession.
when
You
say
know,
that, but the
I'm
intent
from
was obviously there.
I'm from Washington, D.C., and when I used to go back and see my parents regularly, I would listen to RT on the radio. It's called Radio Sputnik. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, man, a lot of the shows are really good. A lot of the information is really good. And to your point, it became difficult to parse, to separate the propaganda from the reality and from some of the minds and analysts who I kind of respect. So I think you make a really good point about RT. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like seeing, your favorite actor do a commercial for cigarettes and you're going, no, come on.
Thank you.
I still love you as a person, but come on.
So look, we're going to talk about the legal part of this. I mean, this is all just smoke. There is really nothing here but smoke on the part of this administration, but you can see how he's peacocking about it and he's owning the news cycle with this Gabbard announcement. But the reality is that what he's distracting from is the Epstein files and these new meetings that are going on right now, actually, with Ghislaine Maxwell and his former attorney, Trump's former attorney, Todd Blanche, who's number 2 at the Justice Department. Give me a moment about how you game out this Epstein thing.
It's complicated on many, many levels. For one, I think that Todd Blanche, of course, now with the Justice Department, number 2 person in the Justice Department, formerly a Trump defense attorney. So he's certainly not there to try and get Donald Trump. Also, I don't think that this is going to be the meeting that anything will come out of that's going to be public. I think this is the negotiation. This is the Ghislaine Maxwell saying, who's, serving 20 years, if I say this, what do I get? Do I get a full pardon? Do I get a commutation? What do I get out of this? And what do you want me to say in order to get that? So I think that's what the Blanche meeting is going to be about. Then that will lead to, if an agreement is made, to her appearance before hearings. And out of that, I think we'll find out, whatever. I want to be clear on this, not because I'm a fan of Trump hanging around with Epstein, any more than I'm a fan of Bill Clinton having hung around with Epstein, or Prince Andrew, or any of the other celebrities who hung around with him. We don't know that any of them had sex with minors. In fact, there is the one story told by somebody who was there when Trump expressed interest, at least ogling a young woman. Epstein said, she's not for you. And there is some evidence that Epstein, even though he provided women for many people, which would still go to, the prostitution charges, that he wanted all the minors for himself. And that, you can have the 18-year-olds, the 15-year-olds are for me. So, we don't know that on the other side of this, we're going to get a smoking gun of Trump with a child. We do know from Trump's own mouth years ago when he talked about Epstein he said, like myself, likes to surround himself with beautiful women, and then added some of them quite young, that Trump probably knew what the hell was going on with Epstein, as maybe did some of these other well-known people of all political parties and backgrounds have known and have chosen, because of Epstein's ability to generate large amounts of wealth for your campaigns, to look the other way. So we don't know what we're getting out of this other than Trump hung around Epstein a lot, as did Bill Gates and many other people. And from that statement, that Trump more than likely knew what Epstein was up to and decided to look the other way. Other than that, we don't know, except Trump is so, because he could just say that. It's pretty much what Alan Dershowitz, who was actually accused by one woman of having sex with her as a minor. Dershowitz has denied it, and so far, other than her statement, there's been no proof of anything. But still, there's this question of, did they know and turn the other cheek? I think that's very possibly the reason why Trump, instead of just going as Dershowitz said, yeah, I was on the planes. I didn't do anything myself. I think that may be why he's going so nuts about this, because it's plain he's in the files. We've always known it. There's tons. He says, I barely knew the guy. There's former statements by him about how they're best friends. They knew each other. They were buddies for 15 years. You know, there's no doubt. The pilot, Epstein's pilot, said, oh, yeah, Trump was on the plane lots of times. Trump has said, no, I've never been on the plane. It doesn't wash. So,
but to that point, Gil, he's taken kind of a hard line on that, and I think the fact that he's swimming away so vigorously, that's the thing that makes this even more radioactive. It's sort of what you said. I mean, he should have been counseled along the lines of what you were just saying, which is, hey, dude, you can say, yeah, Epstein was a friend of mine. I didn't know he was into all this stuff. I flew on his plane a bunch of times. But, he had a big bang in life, and we were a couple of international playboys. But I never was part of anything untoward like that. I was dating centerfolds. I don't know who he was dating. He should have said that. I mean, that was probably the highest ground.
Says, yeah, he was on the plane all the time. We always saw him. It's this thing of Trump just can't take any little nick in the armor. Look, his supporters are anxious for this to go away and have an explanation. If he said, and that's if this is true, but if he said, as you just said, yeah, I was on the plane, hung out, we were friends. Look, I've had friends that I've hung around and didn't know what they were up to and felt especially foolish. Bruce Ritter was a friend of mine, the priest who started Covenant House, helped tens of thousands of young people. When it was first reported by Charlie Sennett in the New York Post that Bruce was having sex with some of the kids, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I absolutely couldn't believe it. And Jerry Nachman, who was publisher of the New York Post that broke the story, called me because we were old friends and said, actually, Jerry was just pissed at me. Said, how can you do this? Do you think I would let a story go on in the paper that wasn't true? And just went absolutely nuts on me. But then he had Charlie call me. And Charlie went, yeah, Gil, I had the same feeling when I started working on this story. I didn't want it to be true. I didn't know anything. It was a supporter of Bruce Ritter, as everybody was, for all of the good side of him. But yeah, Gil, it's true. And so I think,
but what you described, Gil Gross, is something different. You didn't know. But what Trump, I think, and this is probably the reality, to give him the benefit of any doubt, he averted his gaze. He knew what was going on, but he averted his gaze.
Yeah, and that may be true because we don't know what names are in this. That may be true of all of these people. Another problem Trump has, because he came down with such a hard denial of it, was the birthday book. The comment in the birthday book about, us keeping secrets, Jeffrey. Trump has completely denied that. But the lawyer, Edwards, who was the lawyer for a couple of hundred young women who filed a suit against the Epstein estate, he says, oh, yeah, that book absolutely exists. It's right now in the hands of the Epstein estate in Florida. It could be subpoenaed, but that book absolutely exists, and Trump's greeting is absolutely in there despite his denials.
And I have to say, that verbiage, keeping a secret, that flies in the face of all of these kinds of explanations for, well, he was there, but he didn't know about anything. He looked the other way.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was more than he looked the other way. Again, based on what we know, and we're having to put together the little pieces of the puzzle. I will say this because, Jeffrey Epstein ran an international human trafficking organization. And a few days ago, Ron Wyden, who's the senator from Oregon, right? Yeah. Said that his investigators, now he's on the committee, the finance committee, and he's the ranking Democrat on the finance committee. So when he says he's discovered something, it comes from that place on high. He said that his investigators had discovered that 4 big banks had flagged to the Treasury Department $1.5 billion in potentially suspicious money transfers involving Jeffrey Epstein. Much of that appeared to be related to his massive sex trafficking network. This is a revelation, and I'll just say that a lot of these banks and the trail of money extend back to Russia, extend back to some of these countries from which we know these women were trafficked. And this is, he's saying, evidence that the DOJ is ignoring evidence found in the U.S. Treasury Department's Epstein file. There is more, he says. This binder contains extensive details on the mountains of cash Epstein received from prominent businessmen that Epstein used to finance his criminal network. So the Treasury Department has this information because that's where these bank files exist. They have a suspicious activity report. Is it SARS? Suspicious activity reports. And he's saying, and there's a huge demonstrable trail that leads back to Jeffrey Epstein and a lot of these banks. So if you really wanted to pursue this, you could. It's all there in that Justice Department file, but he's saying the DOJ is looking the other way on it.
Yeah, and probably, look, it's not the first time that law enforcement has looked the other way. Remember, Epstein originally gets prosecuted and makes a deal with Florida where all the child sex trafficking charges are dropped against him despite the massive evidence, and he gets, what was it, 18 months, 13 months?
Yeah, that Alex Acosta deal, exactly.
Yeah, and basically gets a slap on the wrist. Now, Jeffrey, you be careful when you have sex with those children, and nothing. Then the DOJ takes it much more seriously, brings much more serious charges, puts together this file that we're all talking about, but then next thing we know, he's dead. And, more than likely suicide. There's questions about it, but so far no evidence it was anything but.
Well, there's no evidence, Gil, because all the video's gone and all the witnesses are gone. And I don't know, you and I could, go around about that another time, but definitely you're right. I mean, the trail, it goes cold because he's not around anymore. It goes cold
at that point, and that file gets put in a drawer. That file gets put in the same place where most of the stuff at the end of the first Indiana Jones movie is put.
Right. There is Jeffrey Epstein over the shoulder of that beautiful woman that Trump is with. This Epstein thing, it's not going away, is it, Gil Gross? I mean, they can keep trying to serve up a news story or and play the old hits, Clinton, Obama. They can regurgitate whatever information they have from the Russians. But the reality is this Epstein story seems to have a half-life that's pretty sticky.
They sold it to MAGA, especially to Q, for years and years and years and years. You cannot sell something for years and years and years and years and suddenly try to make it go away. It's like pretending Donna Reed was the actress who played the wife on Dallas, or that Patrick Duffy, died and then was found in the shower a year later, and pretend that, that didn't happen. We know it happened, and you can't unsell something that you sold for years and then just suddenly, have Patrick Duffy show up in the shower. It doesn't work, and nobody believes it. But this is a real thing. There are real lives involved. Real young women were assaulted, and this is a real story, and they sold it to their crowd, and their crowd is not letting go of this story. Now, does the MAGA crowd expect, Trump to be found guilty in here? Or are they still hoping that, there we go. There's Bill Clinton, and then there's all these other Democrats, and that's what we're going to find? Yeah, probably. But we know Trump is in those files. We have the report from the Wall Street Journal. One of the reasons why Trump is now suing them for $10 billion.
Well, but just on that, though, Gil, he did maintain, look, I don't know what's going on with that report, and that's Pam Bondi's thing. Meantime, he had already been briefed in May on the report, yes. The fact that his name shows up.
Yeah, and anybody who believes that Pam Bondi is doing anything without checking with President Trump first, raise your hand. Yeah, I don't see any hands.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she is a functionary. Look, he's surrounded himself with the Pam Bondis of the world. I mean, he's got a government that is expressing complete fealty. And where the shoe pinches for him, and then I'll let you go, is that a lot of these people were involved in the jihad to transparently reveal all the Democrats who are going to be in that Epstein file.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking about Kash Patel, and I'm talking about Bongino, and so we know about this, and so these guys have an awkward walk back.
They have a very awkward walk back, and plus they can't walk back anything without Trump's permission and say so. And look, whatever you think of Donald Trump, politically, whatever you think of his political smarts or anything else, one of the problems is that Trump throws out word salads. I have a friend who used to work for a program director in Los Angeles who used to just throw out a million things at meetings, and they would try and do them. And finally, the assistant program director, who was an old friend of his, said, don't ever do anything when he says something once. If he says it like 6 times over 2 weeks, then he really means it, and you do that. But a lot of this is word salad. A lot of this is just his feelings at the moment. For God's sakes, don't do anything because he says, do this. And part of the problem is Kash Patel and Bongino and Pam Bondi and all of these people are going to hear Trump say something, and when he doesn't even know what he's saying, and try and act on it, and then very possibly look incredibly foolish the next day. And that's going to be a really real problem for them trying to get out of this mess.
Trump in the first administration seemed to have people who understood what your assistant program director in your story understood, which is that, don't take Trump seriously on a lot of stuff. He doesn't really even focus on a lot of stuff. But now you have people who are surrounding Trump and populating this administration who do jump at his first utterance,
He learned his lesson from the first administration when he had actual grown-ups like H.L. McMaster's around of him. None of them lasted 4 years, but he had actual grown-ups with actual knowledge who would go, yeah, I think it's a good idea, and do things. And his lesson from that is, I want people who, when I say jump, ask how high. And that's all he wants. And that is what he's got now. It's interesting. I've covered Trump since the 70s because I was originally, a New York street reporter and anchor, and we covered Trump. Right. And we looked at him amusedly, and sometimes he would do good things. He saved the woman's skating rink, hooray, you have to name it after him.
He was dining out on the woman's skating rink savior for a long time, wasn't he, Gil?
Oh, yeah, but he was also throwing little old ladies out of buildings that he bought in Central Park South.
Sure.
He was making deals with the mob in Atlantic City, which, by the way, everybody who had a casino in Atlantic City made deals with the mob. You had to do that. So, when people talked about him as president, remember he was a liberal Democrat then. People who say, reporters have always hated Trump because he's conservative. He wasn't. The Clintons went to his wedding with Melania.
Well, this whole anti-gay thing and that's not Trump. Trump is a New York City guy. He's cool with gays. He was a friend of Elton John's, went to his party and all, he was a celebrity. I mean, basically he was a kid born with a silver spoon in his mouth, right? And he just showed up at among the glitterati of New York, always wanting to be legit and never really viewed as legit. You know this better than I do, but that was my understanding of it.
Yes. I'll give you, well, let's talk about talk show hosts very briefly, and then you can let me go off into the night. But
I love it. Please, I need a name drop of some kind because you knew everybody, Gil Gross. Go ahead.
Our good friend who we both knew, Gene Burns, who's a terrific friend. We were talking about Savage and the act he was doing on the radio and the committed right-wing things he was doing. And Gene said, I'll tell you something about him. He said, he asked me when he started out, he said, where do you think there's more money? Being a liberal or being a conservative on the radio? And Gene said, who's a libertarian himself, Gene said, no, you have to be real. You just have to be whatever you want. And apparently got to look like, that's not what I'm looking. That's not an answer I'm looking for. And in that same way, Trump found that there was no way through for him on the liberal Democratic side, which he had given tons of money to and supported for years, and went right. I think he believes most of it now, but mostly what he believes is what's good for me.
Sure.
And yeah,
I think
not,
you don't think he doesn't. I don't mean to focus on the gay thing, but the gay thing to me, the whole anti-gay LGBTQ plus jihad that the Republicans have now become associated with, I feel like that wasn't originally Trump. That's really not. And I don't think he cares because it's not about him and power and money. and getting girls, which is really, those are the three things he cares about. But I just think that that's not in his DNA. I mean,
and being with celebrities, whether it was Elton John or
right.
Michael Jackson, he was always bragging about what good friends they were and all of that. No, it wasn't. He never took any of this stuff with that kind of seriousness. And in terms of having a grown-up around, Trump had a woman, and I'll give him credit on this. He had a woman who was his head of engineering, very, very bright, and he hired her and gave her power at a time that no other New York City builder had. But she told me that all the time I would fire somebody because they were completely incompetent. And then they'd go crying to Donald, and Donald would go, "Oh, no, that's terrible. No, you shouldn't be fired," and rehire them. And she said, "I have to go back and fire them again because, a building could fall down." It's just good to have these people there. So he used to have grown-ups around him who would protect him. And he doesn't have that anymore.
The one thing I would say about your narrative with Trump is it leaves out one huge thing, and that is the way his image was reconstituted by The Apprentice. The Mark Burnett show really shaped a different kind of Trump as a successful businessman, and you know this from having covered him in the 70s and through the decades. You know that he wasn't really a successful businessman, and he wasn't viewed as a successful businessman. He wasn't even viewed as a legit billionaire. But the slow motion walk from the helicopter and from the Trump plane and the music swells and just the way they choreographed that show was so beautifully done that it created an image, and he was able to take that image and ride it all the way to the presidency.
His one big success in New York was converting the old Commodore Hotel, which was old and run down at the time, into the Hyatt. And that was a big thing to him because his dad had done all of his work in Brooklyn and Queens. His dad never got to build anything in Manhattan. And to Donald, that was a big thing of showing dad, you see, me too. I play too. But it's more than The Apprentice. And by the way, since Mark Burnett's been mentioned, we should point out Mark Burnett is a steadfast Democrat, has given tons of money to the Democratic Party. And at the time The Apprentice began, Trump was a liberal Democrat. It goes back a little further than that. I'll make this really brief. Trump is in New York. If Trump is a builder, a Playboy builder in Kansas City, nobody cares. He's the same guy. Nobody cares. He's in New York. He's a character. He invites his girlfriend to the same skiing vacation as his wife. He's good copy. It starts with the New York Post, which makes headlines like Marla Maple saying best sex I ever had. He makes headlines in the New York Post as a tabloid, gets picked up then by Howard Stern because, again, not a political thing. Howard just likes people, especially have stories about women.
He's a good guest. Trump was always a good guest.
He was a good guest. So after the New York Post headlines, Howard has him on. That starts to give him a national exposure. So by time you get to The Apprentice and Burnett picks him, it wasn't because of politics. It was, and that was all scripted. And Burnett would be the first person to tell you that. It was even the "you're fired" line. It was this character that existed because he's in a major media center being a character. Again, if he's a character in Kansas City, we've never heard of him.
Sure. It's funny. My friend at the time, good friend, came up together. He's a programming executive producer, and he ended up running NBC. And he bought The Apprentice. And he told me some years later, not maybe 7 or 8 years later, during the successor run, he said, "I didn't buy The Apprentice for Donald Trump." He said, "I thought Donald Trump was a mess. I bought it for Mark Burnett. I knew that Mark Burnett would make that show work with him." And sure enough, it was a sleek offering. And I'm so glad you kind of filled in the bricks in the wall that led to that, because there was a lot leading up. And you're right. I forget about what a celebrity he was and the Stern stuff and the way that the tabs loved him. He was just great celebrity fodder,
Yeah, exactly. By the time, and again, NBC picks up The Apprentice because of Mark Burnett, but also it was cheap.
Right.
It was all done on the streets of New York, where NBC had studios, had crews. It cost nothing. It wasn't even expensive to the extent of Survivor, which is a very successful Mark Burnett show where they have to go to Fiji. And for years, they were going to different places around the globe. And then there was like tons of editing because they had all of these separate people with camera crews and producers following them. And for a reality show, not a cheap show.
Such a good point.
The Apprentice was an incredibly cheap show. One set, The Office, and then some remote stuff in a city where you had camera crews to spare. And that was another selling point.
Such a good point. Well, I like that we visited all these things, and I really love that we revisited the way we ended up here with Trump being who he is. Gil, please don't make it so long between visits. You know how I feel about you, and Kim feels similarly, so I hope you'll be back soon.
How I feel about you guys. Thank you. And yeah, prayers and good feelings to Kim and her mom.
Indeed. Gil Gross, everybody. So long, Gil. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We always appreciate a good conversation. Good stuff. Albert, thank you for rallying some video for us to remark on. There was some good real-time stuff. I think there was one piece of video I wanted to get to that I didn't get to. Oh, the Folly with a super sticker for $20. Come on. I love it. I feel, big shout out, proud that Oh, the Folly is part of the crew today. Thank you. Super stickers, super chats are live. Our super chats are just part of the overall chat. There's a live chat going on YouTube. You can be part of it. All you have to do is log on to YouTube and rock it. It is free. This whole show is free. It's made possible by primarily the Patreon and PayPal subscribers, those who support us every month. If you want to be one of them, you can jump on Patreon or PayPal and be one of them. There are Patreon and PayPal links under all of our videos. And you can even go to our website, themarkthompsonshow.com, and you can click there. And so that way we can afford to pay Albert his bloated salary and the other expenses we have on this show to try to stay above water. But seriously, it is an NPR PBS model where the show is free, but we ask for your support to help it going. So again, thanks to everybody who is a part of that crew. You guys are the very best. In fact, I got an email. I guess Daniel Martin is a Patreon, or I don't know whether he's Patreon or PayPal, but we had, he's saying, please add my name. I was on it, then I was off it. That has to be painful. You're on it, then
Daniel
you're
Martin's
awful.
probably the most thrilled about around March for March Madness, for Mark's Madness.
Yeah. He says, your show has become a voice of reason. I think Ron Owens wrote a book. Ron Owens is a talk show host in San Francisco. Wrote a book with that as the title. You are the best, no buts. But I have a request. When Tony reshuffles the credits at the end of the show, could you please add me? I've been off the list for a couple of months. Now it's only my only claim to fame, so please add me. Other than that, no complaints. We do love our Daniel Martin, and we'll take care of that promptly. And now I've got some other emails. I will get to them in due time. What was the other video I wanted to run, Albert, just from a housekeeping standpoint?
We have an Epstein video, and we have one more Tulsi Gabbard with a Caitlin Collins video.
Right. Let's give me the Epstein video, because this really updates what's going on today. And I think it speaks to what we know, but at the same time, I think it's important that we underscore it. So go ahead, please.
Today, for sure. Joining us right now is Nick Ackerman. He's a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York and former assistant special Watergate prosecutor. So, Nick, how unusual is this setup, this meeting between the Deputy Attorney General and Ghislaine Maxwell?
This is extremely unusual. You never have the number 2 person in the Department of Justice go and interview anybody. I mean, that is something that is done by line attorneys. What really is going on here, once you dig into this and you realize Todd Blanche was Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer. What they're doing and what's going on here is that they're hoping that Maxwell wants a pardon from Donald Trump. She knows that the only way she'll ever see the light of day and get out of that 20-year sentence is to get a pardon. And what they're hoping is that in order to do that, she'll be motivated to say that Donald Trump didn't know what Jeffrey Epstein was up to with underage girls, and they never participated in that. The problem, of course, is There's no way you could ever believe Maxwell by virtue of the fact that she's got every motive to say whatever she wants in order to get that pardon. So the real question is, if she says that, are they still going to take that and then at some point later give her the pardon? I don't think there's going to be quite the same quid pro quo that you had with the Eric Adams case. Don't forget, Blanche's second in command, Beauvais, did basically the same thing with Eric Adams by dismissing his federal criminal case in the Southern District of New York, in return for him playing ball with the administration's immigration policies. So you see the same thing going on here. But if you kind of step back and say, well, what are they trying to do? They're hoping that if Maxwell thinks that she can get a pardon, that she'll say things that are favorable to Donald Trump. They'll use that. And who knows, maybe down the road, they'll actually pardon her. But all of this really stinks.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Interesting,
That's from
your
the
take on
former
this. I mean-
Watergate prosecutor. I think you don't need to hear from them. These brilliant legal analysts will have, I think David Katz is really without peer. David Katz is coming up, our own brilliant legal analyst in a moment, former federal prosecutor as well. You don't need them because this one is a layup, right? You know what's going on. You don't send the number 2 guy from the Justice Department. And there was even talk for a while that Bondi would accompany him to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, unless you're trying to choreograph a story. You're absolutely trying to choreograph a story with her. And she's desperate to get out of there, and she'll say whatever you want. You write it, I'll say it. She is desperate to get out of prison. And so the idea somehow that Blanche is going down there, and again, the former personal attorney for Donald Trump is going down there for any other reason than to establish what she's going to say and how that might conform with what they want her to say. I think, you don't need, as I say, any particular legal analysis on that one. So we'll keep you posted on that. I will say that there's been a really sweet skewering of Trump by South Park. South Park, again, part of the Paramount family. So it's a weird thing. It's like Stephen Colbert making fun of the deals that Paramount has made and CBS made with Donald Trump. Now you have South Park doing it as well. And South Park, they've had 27 seasons of South Park. And they have begun season 27, covering Trump's lawsuit against Paramount and the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's show. And they depict Trump in bed with Satan. Sermon on the Mount sees the U.S. president in bed with series regular Satan and covers topics including Trump's lawsuit against Paramount, the cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, wokeness, Trump's attacks on Canada, and more. Unlike other characters, Trump is depicted as an actual photo of the U.S. president on an animated body. I don't know if you can. Oh, thank you. Albert is showing it to you now. And there is Satan, who is, again, series regular. There's also an extended scene featuring a hyper-realistic deep fake video of Trump completely naked walking in the desert. There are repeated suggestions that jokes about Trump's genitalia. And the episode centers on the presence of Jesus in South Park schools. That's a story covered by a parody of 60 Minutes. That's a satire of Paramount's recent embroilment with Trump over the flagship show for CBS, which is 60 Minutes. The two hosts refer nervously to, quote, the president, who is a great man and who, quote, is probably watching.
It's really funny. It's like they're basically saying, hey, we're reporting on this, but you know what? We do respect and love the president and all this, but we're here to report here in South Park. It's really funny.
When South Park's parents protest to Trump that they don't want Jesus in the schools, and Trump threatens to sue them for $5 billion, Jesus begs them to settle with the president. Quote, I didn't want to come back and be in the school, but I had to because it was part of a lawsuit and the agreement with Paramount. You guys saw what happened to CBS. Well, guess who owns CBS? Paramount. You really want to end up like Colbert? You guys got to stop being stupid. He also has the power to sue and take bribes, and he can do anything to anyone. It's the effing president, dude. South Park is over. This was, again, all on the episode of South Park. So as it goes, they continue to...
I think they just signed a $1.5 billion deal with Paramount also. So I think they might be stuck with South Park, and South Park might just lean into this knowing that they have some protection for a little bit.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I think the South Park, check this, Albert, but I think the South Park library, maybe it was, I think the South Park library was sold also, like the IP was sold or something. There was some big transfer, I thought, of South Park library-related material that they made a bunch of money on. I don't know, but South Park is a really valuable franchise to them, and as you say, it's played out in the deal they just made. Well, it's the gift that keeps on giving for the Democrats. They are trying to make political hay of it, as you know, the Epstein files I'm talking about. But they can only do so much. Now you have a bipartisan effort to release these Epstein files, and we'll see if anything really comes of it. But it's definitely not going away. And you can trot Tulsi Gabbard out every day, and it's not going away. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I am sorry for your loss. Hulk Hogan has passed away at 71.
What?
I know. Sorry, brother. The Hulkster's got to go. Never nice when someone passes away. He was an icon in the wrestling world. I don't think Albert was among the Hulkamaniacs, though. I don't think you were into, and you're a wrestling guy, but I don't think Hulk was necessarily part of your shrine.
Well, I grew up in the Attitude Era, which is like the late 90s. So he was already like Hollywood Hulk
Hollywood
Hogan.
Hulk.
He went heel at the time, and he was a part of this
Oh, that's right. He
organization.
became a bad guy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he was a bad guy around that time. So.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
He wasn't telling me to take my vitamins at that time. So
He was what? Say it again, sorry.
he was not telling me to take my vitamins and say my
Oh,
prayers.
yeah. He started as a good guy, then he went bad guy, then I guess, I don't know what happened. He became like just a luminary, then he got involved in sex scandals, right? Wasn't there a big thing? Then there was this
A lot of alleged racism. Well, not even alleged, just blatant racism as well. And bad comments coming from his and very controversial stuff on Twitter. And it was just a lot.
I mean, when he tore his T-shirt, as you see here on YouTube, if you're just listening, Albert has the iconic shot of him tearing the shirt to reveal the muscled chest of Hulk Hogan. When you saw him do that at the Republican National Convention, didn't he? Oh, he did it at Madison Square Garden too, didn't he? Yeah, he became this
He
kind
did.
of...
I think he was that same show with Tony Hinchcliffe, and all the celebrities came out on that show.
Right. He was a MAGA nut, says Gordon. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, look, he's just looking for an audience, I think, most of the time. But anyway, he helped catapult the World Wrestling Entertainment franchise, then called the World Wrestling Federation, into mainstream success. He broke the mold in 1996, they say here, Albert, with a stunning heel turn that you described. From hero to villain. That's right. He created the New World Order, officially became a Hollywood Hulk Hogan, as Albert was noting. He was a big part of the world of professional wrestling. He won the World Wrestling Entertainment Championship. Do you know how many times, Albert?
A whole lot of times. A lot of times.
6 times. One of his most memorable fights was against Andre the Giant in 1987. Hogan fought against the 520-pound heavyweight Andre the Giant to a then record crowd of more than 90,000 people.
What?
Yeah. He was inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2005, removed, though, in 2015, after he was exposed making racist comments while being secretly recorded in a sex tape leaked by a friend to the gossip website Gawker. Hogan later sued Gawker with the help of tech investor Peter Thiel forced the publication's bankruptcy. And he won the $115 million lawsuit. That's what forced them under. And then he was reinstated into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018. There is the Hulkster campaigning for Trump and Vance.
He was, I believe, the first person to ever body slam Andre the Giant, who's over 500 pounds. So,
did you see the documentary on Andre the Giant?
I saw bits and pieces, but yeah, very, very
Me too.
sad.
I only remember bits and pieces. Maybe it was a I don't, but I remember it was moving. You know, he had
a genuine struggle with just how large he was, and he
Right.
couldn't do anything normally, and it was his whole life was a struggle. So very, very
yeah.
sad.
In a way, maybe this is the wrong word to use, but it was more than a physical oddity. It was almost a physical deformity that he was because he had so many issues with joints and with bone and musculature, right? It was really kind of sad. But
here's a comment. I think Trump was the only president to go to wrestling matches. He was very heavily involved in wrestling at the time, and he even did a couple spots in the ring.
Yeah. He would go anywhere where Trump, remember, was really into being a celebrity. So he would go anywhere there were many people, and there was likely a role for him to, achieve a platform that he would be okay with. So anyway, rest in peace, I guess, to Hulk Hogan. Again, passes away at 71.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Meantime, on the other side of town, Trump has signed an executive order targeting woke, as he's calling it, AI models and any regulation for AI. It's going to remove environmental protections associated. AI takes up tremendous amounts of water. There are all kinds of issues environmentally with AI, and trying to get AI to play with AI companies to play with environmental concerns and to pursue AI responsibly is really a full-time job, and it's a job that is not enviable given the current administration. And now you just see it. The environmental protections, meager as they are being removed. I saw an article, you can find this, Albert, I didn't put it in the show today, but Meta has wiped out a whole water supply with their AI in some small town. You can take a look, you can find it and maybe add it. But just yesterday, Donald Trump signed a trio of executive orders that he said would turn the United States into an AI export powerhouse, including one targeting what the White House described as, quote, woke artificial intelligence models. He said that, quote, woke Marxist lunacy in the AI models are going to be removed. Quote, once and for all, we are getting rid of woke. Is that okay? He got a loud applause from the audience of AI industry leaders. He then said that Joe Biden had, quote, established toxic diversity, equity, and inclusion ideology as a guiding principle of American AI development. So you immediately knew, he went on, that that was the end of your development. And that got a laugh. The new order requires any artificial intelligence company getting federal funding to maintain politically neutral AI models free of, quote, ideological dogmas like DEI. That puts pressure on an industry increasingly seeking to partner with government agencies, right? So now it's part of the Trump administration's policy to review these AI models and make sure that they conform to what they consider the elimination of wokeness. The directive emphasizes that the federal government, quote, should be hesitant to regulate the functionality of AI models in the private marketplace, but it says that public procurement carries, quote, the obligation not to procure models that sacrifice truthfulness and accuracy to ideological agendas. So again, you can tweak the metrics any way you want to make the AI model politically biased in any direction you want. And if you're getting your money from the federal government run by Trump, you know you want to tweak your AI to conform with a political agenda that he is okay with. That was the executive order of yesterday. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Do it with your iron rod. The way it works is if you get more thumbs up, you get served to people who don't even know that this show exists. So you can have a better chance of showing up in people's feeds if you get more thumbs up. That's kind of the significance of it. It's free, and I really appreciate you guys. Smash it hard.
with your iron
Yeah,
rod.
smash it with your iron rod. Richard Delamater with a $5 super chat says, Mark, has Gil Gross, who was our guest in the first hour, received the rod of equity and mercy? If not, then I would like to shamelessly buy him one right now. Well, I've got David Katz waiting, so I can't do it right now, Richard, but I like what you are thinking. And if there is enough of a call for Gil to get that rod of equity and mercy, I will bestow it upon him. I'd have to do it without him present. That is something we've never done before. So you are actually breaking new ground on the show. But
It's like a remote, like a distant.
Yeah. The iron rod thing is weird, says Jessen Bean. It is weird. I agree. It comes from Michelle Bachmann, I think she said it. She was doing a bunch of Bible thumping. Remember, isn't that where we got it, Albert? And she was, she's,
Smashed it with your iron
that's
rod.
right. Smash it, Lord. Smash it with your iron rod.
It's weird, but aren't all drops weird? There's a reason why we've cultivated all of our drops. So
yeah, exactly. They're all weird. They all have.
Don't talk to me that way.
Yeah, it just has a way.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Sausalito Steve with a $20 super chat. It just says, "Thank you, Mark. We need more of Sausalito Steve. I need thanks on this show, Albert. That's what I need. I don't need pity. I don't need anything.
The only reason I'm here is because you are a friend.
All right. Well, Elon, I'll take a little pity from
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sausalito Steve. Very, very cool. All right. Let's get on with it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is time to visit someone who we visit with weekly. He is one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. I hear him on London radio, see him on British television, also across America on News Nation, on Fox 5 in New York, Fox 11 in Los Angeles, and San Francisco, off to New Zealand and Australia. Does the guy ever sleep? How about it for the brilliant former federal prosecutor, now he's defense attorney in Southern California, David Katz, everyone.
Great to be with you.
Boy, has your Justice Department, where you used to work, changed.
You can say that again.
To see that Todd Blanche, the former Trump attorney, his former personal attorney, number 2 at the DOJ, is going to Florida, there now actually, with Ghislaine Maxwell, meeting behind closed doors. It seems to me, David Katz, that one need only use some reasonable, rational thought to know that they're trying to broker some deal to figure out what she might say to kind of get past this Epstein mess.
Well, it's utterly reprehensible, Mark. It looks like she wants a pardon. That seems to be her only hope to get out of prison earlier than 85% of her 20-year federal prison sentence, which will go on at least for another decade, absent a pardon from Trump. You figure whoever's Trump's Democratic successor is not likely to pardon her. Why on earth would a Democratic president pardon her? I mean, the crimes are just reprehensible, Mark. It's child rape. It's conspiracy to engage in child rape. It's all of this money laundering that was done on top of that. And, according to the evidence presented to the jury, Mark, and accepted by the jury, she was in some ways more instrumental in the child rape allegations than even Jeffrey Epstein, because it was having a woman approach these young women. It was the way that she could talk to them as a fellow woman. It was the way that she, explained what they were going to do and groomed them. That was a huge part. And, some of the shows have read the transcripts. Now, remember, the prosecutor on this case was this Maureen Comey, who just got fired. She's also the daughter of James Comey, the famous former FBI director that Trump is also after. But she got fired by the DOJ out of Washington herself. So they've read some transcripts, and it's pretty appalling, the testimony and the proof against Maxwell. So
yeah, to your point, Maxwell was, and having read some of this myself, Maxwell was very much involved in gaining the trust of these women, and that's what you're talking about with the grooming. And it's absolutely it's so immoral, it makes your head explode that she is very much a key figure in bringing these women into that world, and then the way they are forcibly trafficked in all the ways that they were subsequently.
And then when Trump was asked about it a few years ago, you would imagine all the comments that a decent person really interested in the victims in this case would make about her. And he says, well, I wish her well. I wish her the best. Another one of Trump's statements that's so peculiar in the context that you think it must be a communication with her. If you look out for me, Miss Maxwell, I'll look out for you. Just looking at it from the point of view of her criminal defense attorney, Mark, and don't get mad, I'm not taking her side in any way, shape, or form, but looking at it from her criminal defense attorney, I think that she thinks that she can divide the case, or her attorney thinks that he can divide the case into kind of two parts. She does have this legal argument, and just very quickly, so people will recall, her legal argument goes like this. Jeffrey Epstein is given a sweetheart deal down in the federal investigation of him, federal criminal investigation of him about a decade ago down in Florida. Believe it or not, someone who went on to be in Trump's first cabinet, this Acosta, was the U.S. attorney handling that investigation. He decided to just let the state take charge of it. And Epstein got an amazingly lenient sentence where he just served some, he could do whatever he wanted during the day, and he just had to sleep in this barracks sort of place at night. And that was only for about a year. That was Epstein 1. That was the first criminal conviction of Epstein. As part of making that deal, he signs an agreement with the federal government in the Southern District of Florida, which says that not only I, but 4 of my co-conspirators will be given immunity. She is not named. Miss Maxwell is not named as one of those 4 conspirators. So that's a very good reason to think that she is not one of the co-conspirators who might be included in that extraordinarily weird deal. But even if so, it covered only the Southern District of Florida. It didn't cover the Southern District of New York, where the government found they not only had a case that they could bring, but a case with venue there. Now, this drives me crazy as a criminal defense attorney. I have all these white-collar people normally who haven't paid taxes according to the government. They are not child traffickers. They are not involved in child rape. But it is true that the standard agreement, Mark, only gives you protection in that district. And you kind of have to take it or leave it, because you just can't negotiate any more than that. You can't get the government to say, we will give you nationwide protection. We will give you immunity from prosecution if you accept this agreement in every district in the country. You just figure, come on, my guy is not going to get charged in some other district. Well, her argument is that that immunity covered her. That's the issue that is headlining in the U.S. Supreme Court. Most people think that the Supreme Court's going to either not take that case or they're going to deny her relief. They're going to say Epstein had a deal with the Southern District of Florida, and even assuming for a moment that it covered you, it didn't cover you anywhere but in the Southern District of Florida, and you, Miss Maxwell, were not charged in the Southern District of Florida. So people think, well, why didn't she talk during the case itself? And of course, it may have been that she had nothing really very much to say, and people wouldn't believe her. One of the allegations against her was perjury. Are you lying now, or were you lying then? You were lying when you got convicted of perjury. We know that because you got convicted of perjury and investigated for perjury, but you're telling the truth now. So anybody that she would actually testify against at this point would have a tremendous ability to impeach her based upon the fact that she was either investigated or maybe even successfully prosecuted for perjury. So from her lawyer's point of view, why not cut this into 2 pieces? Why not see how far you get with the legal argument? If you can somehow get this immunity, get some court to rule in favor. If the U.S. Supreme Court denies certiorari or says no, that claim doesn't wash, that dog won't hunt. Then you say, wait, now I have all of this information. And when someone says, well, the information's really late, it must be concocted, why'd you bring it up then? The answer is going to be, because I had this really good legal argument. I wanted to run that one up the flagpole. It's not working. Now I want to talk. Of course, what everybody suspects is that she doesn't really want to talk against anybody. They want her to talk for Trump. And that the whole deal is that she will give a version of events which exonerates Trump's and Trump's cronies and big buddies. And they'll say, oh my goodness, now we have the right? Now we have the Oracle at Delphi. Now we have the Ebus. We have the real story. Miss Maxwell has cleared this whole thing up. All the Republicans under suspicion and Trump are completely exonerated. And that's what Dershowitz is kind of, this Alan Dershowitz is kind of implying all the time when he says, well, nobody currently in the government is in there, but she knows everything that's in there. That she knows everything that's in there. It's a long stretch, Mark, from that. It's a long walk from her knowing what people really did to her telling it honestly, when the only thing that she can gain from all of this is a pardon from Trump. Why would anyone in their right mind, why would her attorney in his right mind have her present any evidence? And what would this deputy attorney general, who used to be Trump's criminal defense attorney, what would he be down there really to do? If you believe that he's down there in great pursuit of the truth, let the chips fall where they may. Are you kidding me? You think that that's what he wants to go down there and let the chips fall where they may? And the last thing is that Trump could, most of these statutes don't have, some I think have no statute of limitations, but there are very long statutes of limitations for these kinds of offenses, child rape and things related to them. And so Trump could very well end up being a suspect in that. And I imagine that his attorney would be the same deputy attorney general. So the idea that deputy attorney general is somehow objectively or for the public looking into this down at the Florida prison is to me ludicrous. And I think that there's an ethical violation. I mean, nothing quite like this has come up before, but boy, just as a matter of ethics, he shouldn't be in the middle of this. There must be some other attorney in America who could represent Trump and go down there and talk to this lady, but not the deputy attorney general. So I think that he's in potential ethical hot water, which is really saying something, because I don't think that people have really said that attorney, they've said an awful lot of things about the other attorney, the one who's up for the Third Circuit, but this particular attorney, I don't think that they've made very many ethical allegations against him. And so I think that this is a lapse. And all I can think of is he's getting so much pressure from Trump. It's like basically do this or quit. Trump is telling him in a very nice way, you're a great lawyer, but do this or quit. And he's going down there to go talk to her. But I think this whole thing is fraud. I think this thing is near scandalous, him going down there. And the last thing I want to say is normally this is done by the FBI's and the FBI agents and the line prosecutors on the case. That's where this ought to start. Who you'd expect to go down there would be 3 FBI agents, right? And one of the U.S. attorneys who was on the case from the Southern District of New York, who knows the case inside and out. Of course, they just fired the most apt person for that, Maureen Comey, but there must be somebody else on the staff. And so you got to think that they don't really want to know the truth. If they really wanted to know the truth, they would send somebody from that case who knew it inside and out, and not the deputy attorney general, big buddy, criminal defense attorney of Trump.
Of course, as typical with this administration and this crew, it's all done in the ham-fisted, lack of sleight of hand way. There is not anything that could happen with this guy Blanche, who is number 2 at the DOJ, meeting with her, that isn't on track anyway to make some deal for what she might say. And what I'd ask you, David Katz, because you are so good about gaming out what like she might say. In other words, you just in the last couple of minutes said, she could say this, she might be impugned in this way because of the perjury, etc. But really all Trump cares about, right, David, is I don't really care about all that. Just make sure she says, I know all this. Donald Trump might have been on a plane or 2 or 7, but he wasn't anywhere near anything. Trump was never part of it. I knew everything, and Trump was never part of anything. He basically just wants her to say some version of that, right?
That's exactly what I fear. So
how do you get to that point? Well, what does that look like? I mean, legally, do you have to, you parade her out in court? And in other words, it's tough for me to figure out how you legally get that sort of deal made.
Well, he commutes her sentence. And there's a huge drumbeat that this is an outrage. It's been misunderstood this whole time. She wasn't nearly involved in Jeffrey Epstein's crimes as the Democrats made it out to look. They wanted to make her look terrible because they were worried she was going to turn on the Democrats. And now this conspiracy by the Democrats to make her look worse than she is has been exposed. It's a great day, Liberation Day, when she gets her commutation. And she gives this testimony in Congress, which is very favorable to Trump, his big donors and allies.
So by the way, I get that. I get that first part. I get everything you just said, although I like that you put some specifics on it. And it's the second part right there at the end. So you're saying this is all playing up. That's what she's going to get. We got to get the commutation, et cetera, time served. But he's going to get is, Trump's going to get is the congressional testimony that will then clear him. Is that the forum in which she'll clear his name?
It may be that she will give some statement, with Blanche and with her lawyer, and that statement will be deemed so overpowering. There'll be a couple of lines from that are trumpeted over and over again. No real need to waste Congress's time with all this. Congress has very important business, the economy, the this, the that, way too important. The problem of bringing her into Congress to testify is that there are some very good questioners, especially on the Democratic side. And some of the Republicans are really going to get heat. That would be an absolute circus with the right wingers demanding, ask her this, ask her that. What about the other thing? The Democrats would be demanding whether they would get it or not, but the Democrats would be demanding that the victims take the stand. There was a fellow who was on MSNBC, an attorney. I'm really sorry, I forgot his name, but he represents a lot of these victims. They were at the time girls. He represents them. Well, he wants to get his 2 cents in, Mark, and say this is an outrage where this thing is going. Let's think about the victims. But yeah, Trump will try to orchestrate this so that they don't have to release the records. We now know that in, I guess, a couple of months ago, Pam Bondi, and you have to think the FBI head, Kash Patel, knew about it too. It's just extraordinary to think that the head of the Attorney General would meet with Trump and tell Trump, hey, you're all over these Jeffrey Epstein records, and that the FBI director wouldn't be in the meetings, this Kash Patel, who was so controversial to be confirmed in the first place. He got on the show, I think it was Rogan's show, and he says to him something like, does Trump know he's in the records? And Kash Patel says something like, well, I don't know how he would. Well, the way that he would know Kash Patel at the time that Kash Patel said, how would I know, was that Pam Bondi, his boss, and we're going to find out pretty much from logs, people will talk, whether he was in there. So how would he know at the time he answered that question? How would I know? Because he was in the meeting or was briefed on the meeting where Trump was told. And then, of course, you start drawing logical conclusions that the reason that the Jeffrey Epstein files weren't turned over was that, I mean, of course, Trump knew that he was in there in the sense that he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein all the time. But I think it was much more specific than that. And I think that Trump concluded this was going to really hurt him. And there was no dancing around it. And then he came up with this total dodge of, well, we'll do whatever the courts say. And of course, he picked the path, Mark, that was least likely to reveal anything that the public's interested in, instead of taking the path that was most likely. The path most likely was to simply use his executive authority, him and Pat Bondi, to release all the stuff. Redacting out victims' names and some things. The way that was least likely to get any information before the public was to try to get the grand jury records, where his attorneys were smart enough to say you'll have to go through a federal judge, and a federal judge will probably deny it. And then I think Trump was hoping that he would say, well, the federal judge denied it. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Let's move on. And one of the reasons it was so likely, Mark, that the federal judge would deny it is that first of all, grand jury secrecy is a real thing. I mean, people go to jail for revealing grand jury transcripts. It's one of those things that's really sacrosanct. What happens in front of the grand jury, and the justification for that, we defense attorneys go crazy. We want to know if there's any misconduct in there, if there's anything that would help our clients. And we're always told, no, you can't have it. And one of the reasons is that innocent people would be hurt. That the grand jury is not only to indict those who look like they're responsible for crimes, but to not indict those who look like they're not responsible for crimes. And for those people, it would be, public opprobrium, all of that, to allow that to be disseminated. So it was pretty obvious that it was not going to be allowed by the federal judge. And on top of that, that's always just a very condensed version. It's all that they want to present to the grand jury to get the grand jury to return an indictment against two specific people, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, it's not to go into who are all the other people involved. That's extraneous. So it was designed, if it worked at all, to not provide any information that the people want to know. And what, of course, the people, including the right-wing MAGA base, want to know is who the hell else is in there? Who else is culpable for what Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell were up to?
Yeah. The grand jury testimony, even if revealed, as you say, just one it's 1/1000th of what people want to know. The House Oversight Committee, though, voting yesterday, David Katz, to subpoena the Department of Justice to release those Jeffrey Epstein files, passed by an 8-2 vote. And notably, 3 GOP lawmakers, Nancy Mace, Scott Perry, and Brian Jack, joined with the Democrats on that subcommittee to approve that subpoena. They defied the Republican leadership in doing that. Legally, they are compelled to, under what set of circumstances, this might be the way to ask it, might the Justice Department be compelled by Congress to release those files?
Except for 1 or 2 of those Republicans in the House, they're huge phonies playing a big game of bait and switch on the public, including their own Republican constituents and the MAGA base. If they really wanted to get somewhere, here's what it takes. 5 Republican House members, not the 11 that supposedly are adamant about this, 5 of them to say to the Speaker, we will not go in, we will not leave for the summer right now. We will enforce this subpoena. The 5 of us are demanding, Mr. Speaker, that you enforce this subpoena to get these records, and you do all of these other things to move this investigation along right now. And the 5 of us are going to not agree to adjourn. We are going to remove you as Speaker if you adjourn us. Those 5 Republican House members could have made this happen. So this is all, game playing where they act like they're so outraged. And these 3 who voted for it, they're also big game players because they could have made the House Republicans in Congress just stick around, because all the Democrats would have voted to stick around. They would have been happy to remove the Speaker to enforce the subpoenas. So I think the reality is that no one's going to really be around to enforce the subpoenas. They're all going to go home. There won't be anybody to do anything until September, by which time the Republicans and Trump hope that the public has forgotten about this. I don't see any.
But just to be clear, there's no expiration date on that subpoena. They come back, they reconvene in September, and they would have to at least respond to the subpoena.
They would have to respond to the subpoena. I mean, right now, if the subpoena was issued to the Department of Justice and it said you have a date certain, let's say it's August 15th. They'll produce something by August 15th, but it'll be the Department of Justice's, Trump's Department of Justice ideas of what helps them to produce. And then when people say, wait a second, you didn't comply with the subpoena, what about this, what about that? They'll be long gone in September. They'll come back, wait a second, what you produced on August 15th was totally non-compliant. The can will get kicked down the road, and they hope that, there'll be other things that grab the public's attention, and that people will have, as Trump says, why is everyone so interested in Jeffrey Epstein? Well, let's say you were during the campaign, all of your cronies were. And of course, this is the classic, the chicken's coming home to roost, that look out watch what you ask for, you might get it.
Yeah.
And of course, now that they get it, now that they have the power to release all that stuff, they don't want to. The other remarkable thing is suing the Wall Street Journal, which seems to have great story after great story. And people think, why on earth are they doing that? These 2 titans of the right, Trump and Murdoch. But Murdoch, I think, is smart enough to realize that there'll be a Wall Street Journal, there'll be a New York Post, there'll be a lot of his empire 3.5 years from now, and Trump will be an ex-president. So I think Murdoch is looking at the long game and the reputation of the Wall Street Journal, which, let's face it, right now is stellar. I mean, what a coup for the Wall Street Journal, this series of stories they're running.
Well, it only improves their reputation that they, as you say, take on this series of stories, right?
Yeah.
They're not just carrying the water for the president or for a political party. I wonder if you think that there's...
Mark, one last thing. I see Trump's suit as going absolutely nowhere. One thing is that, ABC and CBS both wanted something, needed something, and Trump made it clear that that was the quid pro quo. But I don't think Fox really needs anything, or the Murdoch empire. They're in pretty good shape. They've got Sky News over in Europe. I don't think that they really need his regulatory approval of anything. And so why not run up the value of the credibility of the Wall Street Journal? And people say, why did he file the lawsuit when he was sure to lose it, Trump? But Trump had to, in the theater of it,
Sure.
I'm going to sue you, and I sued you. He needed the theater of that.
That's a great point, though, about them not needing anything. I want to ask you, because Katsadamas was so correct, the appeals court finding that Donald Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship is unconstitutional and does uphold the block on his effort to end birthright citizenship. So congratulations, Katsadamas. You said it would happen. What is the future of that? Is he really going to keep bumping this up to the Supremes? I guess he will.
Yeah, this is the Ninth Circuit that ruled 2-1 that the injunction could stay in effect. And the injunction basically bars Trump trying to enforce a ban on birthright citizenship. In other words, it bars him from doing things like you get born in the United States and it's not registered, or you're not registered with some federal agency. All of those things that he was going to do to create havoc and make people's lives miserable. He can't do those things because at the end of the day, there is a right to birthright citizenship. The interesting thing in the Ninth Circuit, and there was a ruling like that in New Hampshire too. Remember, there's a judge in New Hampshire who certified a class action brought by all the people born in the United States as of like 2 weeks ago. They're in that class. They all have this interest in saying the same thing, which is that we were born in the United States. We have a right to be citizens. He certified that class. So there's a parallel case that basically establishes the same principle in San Francisco or in somewhere in the West Coast. Anyway,
Right.
this is the Court of Appeals that covers the West Coast. It was only 2-1. Now you might say, well, wait a second. One judge, Trumpy, of course, appointed by Trump. The one judge, what he disagrees with Katsadamas. He actually, he has a different copy of the Constitution, which doesn't say born in the United States. No, his point was that this was too close to a nationwide injunction. This was too much to the universal injunctions. So he didn't agree that there should be an injunction kept in place. The two said, yes, there is an injunction in place. And on the merits, there is birthright citizenship. So I think that especially with the one Trumpy vote, I think that this is going to go up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I think that Trump is going to, I don't think he can back down on this one and accept this defeat in the largest circuit in America. I think he feels like he has to take it to the U.S. Supreme Court. And they'll meet it when they can't dodge it anymore. The U.S. Supreme Court will meet it. And even the 6 of them, 7 of them, maybe all 9 of them will say that the Constitution is very clear. It means what it says. And it says that if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen, notwithstanding the status of your parents.
Part of Donald Trump's signature tax legislation takes money from Planned Parenthood. And they went to court over this, David Katz. And the victory is partial, I guess, in this legal fight with Trump. A provision in that bill, reading from this report, ends Medicaid benefits for 1 year to abortion providers that received more than $800,000 from Medicaid in 2023, even to those like Planned Parenthood that also offer things that have nothing to do with abortion, like contraception, pregnancy tests, and STD testing. The U.S. District Court judge in Boston granted a preliminary injunction that for now blocks the government from cutting Medicaid payments to Planned Parenthood or member organizations that either don't provide abortion care or didn't meet a threshold of at least $800,000 in Medicaid reimbursements in a given year. It's not clear right away how many Planned Parenthood organizations and clinics would actually continue to get Medicaid reimbursements under this decision, but it seems as though it's a partial victory for Planned Parenthood.
It looks like it's a victory for the Planned Parenthood branches that are very small because they'll have less than $800,000 at issue. And apparently that threshold is in the legislation or something like that. I guess it's in the big ugly bill. And so the way that they wrote it, I guess the judge said, well, that protects you. You can still get your funding if it's less than $800,000. So that may be for some very small offices. And then if you don't provide any abortion services at all, let's say the office in Baltimore doesn't provide any abortion services, even if it's millions and millions of dollars, it still gets the Medicaid money because it doesn't provide any abortion. So it's sure not total victory. And you know, the Republicans in the big ugly bill, this was not the moderate Republicans. This was the real anti-choice Republicans getting their way and defunding Planned Parenthood because it provides a choice. It provides abortions to people who are determined to need them and want them.
Well, and again, so much of what Planned Parenthood does has nothing to do with abortion. And so they've been smeared in a sense, and their jihad on the part of the GOP has included, defunding them, when the reality is most of what they do has nothing to do with abortion. I wanted to ask you about something that is associated with revelations coming out of these confinement centers, detention centers. There's a one in New York City that is just brutal. There is footage showing people sleeping on the floor next to toilets in this facility. It's clearly overpacked. It is incredibly cold in these rooms in Manhattan. And it shows this footage, about 24 men in these bare rooms, some lying on the floor. They're in these aluminum emergency blankets, some of them. Others just sit on benches. And there are 2 toilets that are just feet away from where people sleep, separated by this low wall. There's no privacy whatsoever. There was a guy who was detained, and he snuck a cell phone in and was able to record these images. So I'm asking and mentioning these things in the context of the law, which is your area of expertise, because I'm wondering if there is anything legally that can be done to speak up for these people who would seem to have no agency in the American justice system, those detainees.
Well, the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution bars cruel and unusual punishment. So I'm sure that some advocacy groups are arguing that these terms of confinement constitute cruel and unusual punishment. We'll see judge by judge how far they get. They may be able to ameliorate some of the conditions just because the administration has so many things to fight over. Maybe they'll try to improve these facilities and avoid some of these fights, bearing in mind that just like with the bad cops, the bad prison guards hate any exposure. They hate anything in the sunshine, which shows what bad cops, they're like the cams, the people filming what's going on when the cops arrive and do brutal things. And the prisons, how bad they actually are. I can say from having visited a few prisons, especially some state prisons, some of them were just awful. Just couldn't get my head around anybody having to be confined there. And I had a client or two who was confined in such a place. The Montgomery City Jail in Alabama comes to mind. I had a client who was there for a while. But generally, these cases of cruel and unusual punishment, Mark, they don't tend to succeed. And if it goes to the U.S. Supreme Court, it's just very hard to imagine that the 6 of them are going to say that these are cruel and unusual punishment. I don't want to always be the one giving the other side of it, but I suppose the Trump administration would say, now that we have all of this money, we can provide some blankets to these poor people. We can upgrade the conditions. I don't think that's what they're going to use the money for, but presumably they'll use some of the money to make some of these conditions better. It's just awful. Part of it is to get these people to sign papers. They deny them lawyers, they deny them any legal assistance, and they hope that these conditions are so awful that, within hours, they'll agree to voluntary deportation. They'll say, yes, put me on a plane, get me out of this hellhole. And there's thousands of them who are being put on planes, supposedly consenting to leave, and they're consenting because of these awful conditions and because they don't have a lawyer to give them advice that you may be able to challenge this.
Yeah, it's part of the entire structure of the immigration aggression on the part of ICE that the brutality is a feature, not a bug. It's supposed to send the message, get out of here, because it can get a lot worse than even it is now.
That's why they're sending people to South Sudan. It can't possibly be efficient in any kind of money-saving way or anything, but you get the message, okay, I'm being sent to a country where everyone's starving, where there's a civil war. I'm going to either self-deport or I'm not going to come to America in the first place. It's really of a piece with separating children in the first Trump administration, mothers and children. That was awful. And everyone said, oh, my God, this is awful. America shouldn't be doing this. But Trump's thing would be, well, it works. It deters people. And that's exactly what Trump would say about this. It deters people that we're sending them to such horrible things. We're doing such awful, awful things to them. And we're not concerned about the reputation of America in the world and including going forward. It's just, transactional. It's that moment. And he has managed to have people stop crossing the border at the rate that they were under the Biden administration. Believe me, he's going to try to run on that. The Republicans are going to try to run on that. It was ugly, but it worked. It was ugly, but it worked. And you didn't want all those people in America that Biden was letting in. That's one of the things he's going to run on. We're going to run on the economy and the tariffs and all the terrible things that he's done. And he's going to run on some of this. The cruelty worked.
Well, you can run just as an aside on the economy, but the economy may be seriously affected by the brutality. Like one is connected to the other. You keep pulling all these construction workers off of job sites. You keep pulling all these high school graduates who are stellar stars out of their high school graduation. And after a while, these things do have an effect on the American economy. You go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you go to kitchens, restaurants, and all the other places, childcare services. And before you know it, your economy is dramatically affected by the loss of all of these people who have done nothing wrong. A federal
That's
judge
why we're going to win, Mark. That's why the Democrats are going to win the midterms.
From your
among
lips.
other reasons.
Yes. Quickly, David, I know I'm going to lose, but just on this, Kilmer Abrego Garcia released from this Tennessee prison on a judge's order. He'd been held there since he got back from El Salvador, which was a wrongful deportation, as you know. And then it was stipulated by this U.S. district judge that immigration and customs enforcement officials are not permitted to arrest him as soon as he is released. And that's kind of the other dance they do with these people who are wrongly confined. They're released and then they're immediately arrested again. They say, the judge does, if the Trump administration wants to deport him to another country aside from El Salvador, which they've expressed interest in doing, they have to give his attorneys 3 business days notice in order to prepare a defense. Some thoughts?
Well, I certainly think that that's an equitable ruling by the district judge in Tennessee who has that case. I'm not sure if the Trump administration is going to accept it, just as Katsadamas. They may say that that's beyond the authority of the district judge, that the district judge can release him on bail, which apparently the district judge is about to do because he's got this criminal accusation, which seems very weak against him, that he's a trafficker and he was driving some people through Tennessee and he got a ticket. And they've made a big deal out of that. They try to make a federal case out of that right now against him, federal criminal case. So I think the judge can release him on bail. But I think the Trump administration may go to the circuit down there, which I think is a pretty conservative one, and say that this district judge did not have the authority to say what the immigration authorities can or cannot do with him after that. There is an order, remember, that he couldn't be removed at all. And that was the illegality of sending him down there to El Salvador when a judge had previously ruled he could not be sent to El Salvador because his life was at risk if he was sent to El Salvador. So maybe they could go back to that judge, you with me, Abrego Garcia's lawyers, and get relief from him. But what the Tennessee judge is trying to do may be ultra virus. It may be beyond the power that he really has. He has power over that case, U.S. versus Abrego Garcia in his criminal courtroom, but he may not have power over everything that happens to Abrego Garcia. So we'll have to wait and see what actually happens. What I would like to see is Abrego Garcia get out on bail and be able to have a press conference and tell the world the torture and inhumane treatment that he suffered at the hands of the Trump administration. They were pulling the strings on the world's coolest dictator down there in El Salvador, self-described. That dictator calls himself the world's coolest dictator.
No, he peacocks about it. Absolutely right. Brags
He's made life absolutely hell for his opponents. All of his opponents who have the means have tried to get out of the country because he means to have an absolutely authoritarian. People throw around the word fascist regime. I think he'd probably fess up to fascist too. And the way he plans to destroy and kill, his opposition down there. So I wish that Abrego Garcia could talk about, like in a press conference, talk to the nation how he was forced to sit for 9 hours straight. And if he fell over day after day from the exertion of sitting 9 hours straight on his knees, then they would beat him if he fell on the floor. And they did all of these other awful things. Remember, they did that to everybody there. He's just the only one who was lived to tell. And I would love to have him tell his story to the American people, which it seems like that's one thing that he could do. That's another reason why I think the Trump administration is going to try to find some way to either deport him right away or do something with him right away.
They don't want to talk
to the nation before he tells the nation and goes on these talk shows. But I sure hope he does that.
I have one last thing, and that relates to Columbia. Columbia University made a deal. They're going to pay more than $220 million in an agreement that's supposed to resolve the threat of these funding cuts to Columbia University. Well, you'll remember the reason they're settling is they were being attacked and sued, and they pulled their funding, the federal funding, because they the administration said didn't protect Jewish students during all of the protests at Columbia University, and created an environment of anti-Semitism at Columbia. So Columbia is paying, I mean, this is no small amount of money, $200 million in this settlement. Now, I think you're going to tell me they did it because they have even more money in federal grants in the offing. So pay the $200 million, you'll get even more money from the feds by tapping out this way.
Well, Mark, I was invited onto a show in New York. This is a bigger story in New York than anywhere, because Columbia University, of course, is in Manhattan, on the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights, right near the Hudson River, to sort of situate it for people. It was at the same time as your show, Mark, so I decided to do your show, but I was all ready to go.
Come on.
In case they could juggle the two of them, I was all ready to go on this Columbia. And I think I was going to be the middle of the road guest there was one group that was going to say Columbia, one guest was going to say Columbia was just awful and they got what they deserved. And another was going to say, like a lot of the professors have said, that this is an outrage, and that once you give in to a blackmailer and an extortionist, they just keep blackmailing you and extort you. And that's what Columbia can be looking forward to for the next 3.5 years. Never give an inch. And I was going to be the one to say that if I was on the board of trustees at Columbia, I think I would have voted for this. And the reason I think I would have voted for this is because Harvard has this unbelievable endowment. And no slight on Columbia, but Harvard is almost in a world of its own in terms of how huge its endowment is and how prominent it is in the public's mind. And I thought Harvard is one of the few universities that could really endure fighting the Trump administration and fight them for the whole 4 years. And that may be what Harvard's going to do, all the way to the Supreme Court, fight them, let them stop their cancer research, let them stop their infectious disease research, unless the courts force the federal government to fork over the money to Harvard. I thought Columbia was making kind of a wise decision. First, at $220 million, wise given the situation that they're in, Mark. The $220 million they're going to pay over 3 years. So the Trump administration has some incentive, I guess, not to keep piling on them, right? Because they only get $70 million a year, and then after 3 years, Trump's over. So that was one reason to pay. And then it's like $1.4 billion that they were going to lose, or even more than $1.4 billion. And unless some court miraculously, the courts made them pay the money, Columbia was really going to have to stop doing this major research, and they had major research studies that were going to come to an end, Mark. So they'd spent many years doing these studies, and the study would have to stop. The study that they spent over $1 billion on was going to become worthless because the study was going to have to stop, midway.
Researchers estimate that Columbia was likely facing another $1.2 billion in frozen fundings from the NIH after the Trump administration cut the original $400 million from the top research university. And that is what you're talking about. They would have to drop all of these research projects in mid-research.
And it may be that these huge universities that have so many different facets, maybe they can't really be the top cancer researchers anymore. Maybe that has to be done, at some place that's not so much, and because another administration could come along. You may think, well, there'll never be another one like Trump. But if you're looking at it from Columbia's point of view, you're looking at the next 50, 70 years of what kind of institution they're going to be. Maybe this will be the norm. Every time they don't like the politics or the decisions of some university, they take away this research funding, and the research can't live without this funding, Mark. It seems that the two are a little bit incompatible. In the Harvard case up in Boston, the district judge said, what on earth does $2 billion to Harvard? This is not Columbia now. $2 billion to Harvard, cutting off the $2 billion for cancer and infectious disease research. What does that have to do with anti-Semitism? But that disproportionality, that clash, will happen university after university. And it may be that they have to decide they're going to be basically a university like we think of Columbia being, or we're going to be this huge research mill that has billions of dollars coming in from NIH and HHS for the research function. But let me go into just one other thing, Mark, if I have a minute.
Okay, go ahead, and then I'll come out of that.
Okay. And so then there's the monitor piece. So they were also very worried because there are 3 or 4 different actions against Columbia. And by making this deal, they settled all of those actions. So this was the remedy. They certainly found a better remedy that Columbia could live with than the remedy, the drastic, almost death penalty remedy that the Trump administration had in mind. But the other clashes are over this anti-Semitism. Now, I'm Jewish myself. I think that there were some excesses. I don't think things got to the point. But the Trump administration said they got to the point. There's civil rights violations, and that's what the $220 million fine over 3 years is supposed to be. They're going to pay this huge fine that they didn't do more about anti-Semitism. One thing that these universities did, they did it at UCLA, they did it at a lot of different universities, was they allow these encampments, Mark. And people have gotten very used to the encampments. They go all the way back to divesting South Africa. You know, it's an earlier generation that remembers all of these encampments against funding or doing business with South Africa. Now they've, of course, moved into not doing business with Israel, these encampments. The encampments are very disruptive, Mark. If I were an administrator, I would have, I think, been more cautious about these encampments. I mean, having, 100 students who just, or non-students, just kind of live there and demonstrate for what they're demonstrating. And they don't go home. And every day, you have to end up going around them.
They're setting up in the quad there, or whatever they call it. They're setting up in, but yeah, it impedes people from getting to class. It's incredibly disruptive. I never thought they should have allowed those things to set up.
And, almost all the universities did that under Biden and with the protests. And I think part of it, they felt justified because what Israel was doing, the settlements were bad enough, but what Israel was doing to Gaza was so extraordinary. It was so repugnant. It was like, we have to express this in some way. But when the expression became these huge encampments, and then it's just obvious that from the excitement of it all, as they saw a Jewish student with a yarmulke on or something like that, something that was especially distinctively Jewish, it got to be a very hostile environment for the Jewish student. And from the Trump administration's point of view, they didn't do enough about it. So what is Columbia going to do about it now as part of this? First, they're going to hire 16 or 17 basically cops who are going to deal with it. The Ivy League schools, and you can't blame them for this, a lot of the schools didn't want to look like a police state. They didn't want to have cops all the time disrupting demonstrations. They sort of erred on the side of thinking the demonstrations were peaceful when maybe they weren't so peaceful, especially if you were a Jewish student, running into this hostility. So they have 16 or 17 people now who are going to sort of break up anything that starts to be bad. They're going to ask anybody with a mask on for ID. That's part of the agreement. So no masked people. The ICE is not covered by this deal. ICE can still come on your damn campus masked, but not someone who's a pro-Palestinian protester. They're going to be asked for their ID, take off their mask, I guess maybe take a photo of them. They're going to be these folks here. And they're going to have a monitor. He's a former assistant U.S. attorney from, who better to hire, Mark, than a former assistant U.S. attorney. He's going to be the monitor, and every 6 months, he's going to make a report. He's going to take complaints about any instance of anti-Semitism. One thing that mattered a lot to Columbia was that Columbia would not allow the federal government to pick faculty or to actually make the admission. So they got that. Columbia got that.
That was the original negotiating stature of the government, was that, we're going to have control over your curriculum, over your professor hiring and firing. It was really scary.
So Columbia got that, but Columbia had to give and did give something. I don't know, had to. Again, Columbia gave some things in it. One of the things they gave, there's also been this affirmative action ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's a whole other basket of stuff against Columbia. That got subsumed in all of this too. On the affirmative action piece, they have to tell they have to not engage in any affirmative action. They have to disclose, I guess, the high school record, the ethnicity and sex of the applicant, what their SAT score was. They have to have SAT scores. Remember, a lot of the universities were dispensing with standardized examinations. Columbia has to have standardized examinations submitted as part of the admission package. They have to know the race, sex, ethnicity of the person, and that allows the monitor and the public to look at, are they using, quote, DEI or affirmative action, especially now that the U.S. Supreme Court has said that you cannot use affirmative action in the way it used to be used. And the very last thing, Mark, is that there are there's a monitor that has to, not a monitor, but there's someone in charge of like Middle Eastern studies. They put in some provost who has to do with Middle Eastern studies. And I guess he's going to make sure, if you don't mind me using the expression, that everything is kosher when
Right.
it comes to Middle Eastern
Well,
studies.
there is this and we're out of time, but I just want you to respond to this. I'm seeing this more and more in the chat right now. Inlay says he'll just ask Colombia for more. This administration will just ask Colombia for more. They just don't get it. You bend to Trump, and he takes and takes. And the encampments on the administration, not for Trump to punish. What about the fact that there's this notion that if you give in, you don't take the administration on, you are just going to be asked for more and more concessions on down the way. I think you've kind of gamed it out, and I think in a defensible way, the deal that they've made. But what about this? I'm seeing it a lot in the chat, which is none of these institutions should be giving in to the federal government.
Well, there's a civil rights division, and right now it looks a little bit like Animal Farm, right? That it depends who's in charge. But according to the Trump administration, there are these civil rights violations that are going on. And they're not against minorities and people of color. They're against Jewish students and right wingers who supposedly are not allowed to express their right wing views on these liberal campuses. And so they're doing something about it. And they're in power right now. I mean, this is the realpolitik of it, Mark. They're in power right now, and Colombia just felt that the $220 million over 3 years was about the worst that was going to happen to them under Trump. And like they're now allowed to bid on other grants. They're allowed to do all these things. I get it, Mark. I get it, but they just.
I completely agree. I mean, I think this sort of is something that you are very familiar with, because oftentimes in lawsuits of one sort or another, and we've certainly seen it in the case with Trump, right? He sues ABC. It's a winnable case. It's a ridiculous case. He sues CBS. It's a winnable case. It's a ridiculous case. He sues various law firms and prohibits them from entering federal buildings. That's a completely winnable case too, if they were to take that on. But it's just easier to tap out, write the check, and keep a relationship with the federal government that can redound to your benefit. And in this case, I think you gamed it out so well, David Katz, when you said, hey, look, there's all this other stuff that is so critical in terms of money. It dwarfs the $220 million. Just pay the $220 million and continue with these research projects to which you've referred, and life will be better at Columbia than it would be taking on the federal government.
And people who are depressed about all of this, yes, it's true that Trump may come for more concessions and he may come for more money down the road, but I think Colombia feels like they have that pretty much hemmed in and controllable. And of course, when the Democrats come back into power, they can make it all up to Colombia. And when the Democrats come back into power, it's going to be a lot of making it up. I mean, it'll be like undo. I think that'll be one of the great slogans, undo it all. Undo it all, and
I feel like the refrain when the Democrats come back into power is sounding a little bit like when Jesus comes back, because I don't know which one's going to happen first, David Katz.
I've got a lot of political faith.
I know. That's why I enjoyed talking to you, in addition to all the great legal knowledge. David, thank you for making us a priority and spending time with us today. So appreciate you. Don't know if you heard, Kim's mom suffered a stroke. We think it's a mild stroke, but it's been serious enough that she's been hospitalized. So that's why Kim's not here today. But I know you love Kim dearly, so I will pass along your sentiments. I do love Kim dearly,
and this is the first I knew about that, and I wish her family and her mom all the best. A lot of people recover. That's the good news. Modern science, some of it being developed at Columbia, a lot of it being developed at UCLA, is doing fantastic things about strokes and other things like that.
Indeed. Thank you. I'll let you go. David Katz, everyone. Thanks, David. Appreciate you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I appreciate you, all of you who have joined today, who have joined us. Jesus never did come back, says Mindy. Oh, that's right. Well, that's why it's going to be really even better. Like what? He's, oh, wait a minute. You mean he didn't come back the first time? Like, I don't know. Albert, you know the Jesus story better than I do. He did come back once, and now this would be a second return. So
I think, yes.
Yeah. And all I can say is that David Katz is pretty awesome. Thanks, Mr. Katz, his IPX studio. Yeah, I really am a Chuck Mangione passed away today? Is that
he
right?
did? I thought I was gonna get quizzed on this, but I saw that early, like one of the first things this morning, because I looked up Twitter. I saw Hulk Hogan died, and then I looked at like the top stories, and it was Chuck Mangione at the top. I was like,
Chuck
what?
Mangione, the jazz great Chuck Mangione. Wow, he was great, and he like Herb Alpert cracked the top 10 in Billboard with what was just a jazz instrumental. You know, we can't play it for you because we'll be demonetized. We would normally in the old radio show play all this Mangione stuff. Music was so much a part of what we did. We can't do any of it now. But Chuck Mangione, how old was he, Albert?
84.
Wow, he was 84? Man.
And he played a very, not a common instrument. He played the flugelhorn, Mark, which is not quite a trumpet, not quite like a mellophone or like it's like a little bit bigger of a instrument. I'm trying to get a picture right now.
Yeah, very good Chuck Mangione flugelhorn knowledge. I'm quite impressed. He died 2 days ago, apparently, by the way. The word is just getting out. His official death was on Tuesday. There he is playing. So is that a flugelhorn?
Flugelhorn, yes, that's correct.
Flugel. It's flugel.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Really, really a big loss. His song, the big one that broke the top 10. It was huge. Does anybody know what it was called? What was Chuck Mangione's? Don't tell them, Albert. I know you're Googling. Don't Google it,
Google
guys.
it.
Come on, please. Can we have a little pride in our guests? What was the name of Chuck Mangione's hit song? Feel So Good is right. Well done, underdog. That song was everywhere, Albert. You kids don't understand the ubiquity of a hit song back in the 70s and 80s.
I mean, and it's an instrumental. Like usually the general public needs lyrics or wants to hear singing. So
Right. Yeah. The guy who comes to mind who also, of course, was remarkable in what he did was Herb Alpert. Herb Alpert had I just heard the statistic last night actually. Herb Alpert, again, trumpet player Herb Alpert was, I believe, and still is. Herb Alpert's 90. Anyway, I think he had more top 10 songs apart from the Beatles, more top 10 songs than anybody else in the 60s. And that, just like Chuck Mangione, that was a phenomenon of instrumental music. There was only one song he had where he sang. So yeah, Taste of Honey, Tijuana Brass double album.
I think Billboard has it 2 #1 hits, 5 top 10 hits, and 39 total songs in the top 10 for Herb Alpert.
Yeah, so impressive. You're going to see Herb Alpert in Sacramento. Tell me how that show is, Phineas. You can write to me at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. I'm curious because I want to see him when, I think in November, he plays a show at his place called Vibrato in Southern California. Yeah. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com is our address if anybody wants us for any reason. But again, not to get too into that digression, Chuck Mangione, rest in peace, my friend, gave so much pleasure to so many people listening to his music. This is a return to Jeffrey Epstein. This is what I love. There's always somebody who goes, oh, shouldn't you be using this term? Sadi Abati says, wouldn't it be rather closer to the truth to use the expression child trafficking instead of human trafficking when talking about Epstein? Isn't that what was really going on? I honestly think both were going on. I think human trafficking and child trafficking. If you read the reports of what was going on with Epstein, there were adults that were young women, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, many from Eastern Bloc, what we consider Eastern Bloc countries, being trafficked. So there was that, and then there were, as you say, the children. So yeah, I think they were both going on. I don't know what's the more appropriate way to put it. Kim, of course, with no after party today because of family matters. And for us,
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We are out of time. Albert, thank you. And
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Oh yeah, out of time. Thank you very much. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.